Hi guys, we're back with the Chris and Ryan show. Today we're joined with Ricky Nicol, who is the founder and now vice chairman of Commsworld. Is an Edinburgh-based IT telecoms dealer that has gone on to do some really, really big things in the UK, and we're going to be talking about that today and Ricky's life as well. So, as we always do, Ricky, how are you doing today?
Hi guys, well thanks for inviting me along. I'm absolutely delighted, and I'm looking forward to quite a entertaining chat.
Yeah. Me too.
I'm sure it will.
So as we always do, we like to start off early life and find out what it was like growing up and where you grew up and how that kind of led on to the early stages of your, first job and career and kind of thing, and what you picked up along the way, those early years.
Yeah, well, okay, thanks. Well, I was born in Edinburgh, born in, St James Square, St James Centre today. So it used to be the old tenement buildings, and it's now a modern, debatable new development that's getting done. But I moved very, very early, 2 or 3 year old, I can't even remember, out to Greendykes at Craigmore, out to what my mother thought was the country, where she had her own kitchen and bedrooms and everything. So Greendykes was absolutely phenomenal, absolutely brilliant. All young families, all playing sports, football, boxing, basketball, absolutely outstanding. So I went to Greendykes School, went to Castlereagh School. Castlereagh, again, brilliant school, brilliant people, still my pals today. Again, everything revolved around sport, everything revolved about football. Education was at the back of the queue, it's fair to say. We were not overly interested in education, really, when I think about it. But it was different in the days, So I mean, I was quite clever. That sounds silly, but I was quite clever. I got 5 O grades. And never done any homework, just turned up, either got them or you didn't. And whether you got them or not, you weren't overly worried about it. Although I learned after it is when I had 5 O grades, it gave me options of types of jobs. So I was offered jobs as a joiner, I was offered jobs as an electrician, for Auntie, working as a technician, an engineer in the pit, because Craigmore was very much pits and breweries. But I was also offered a job in telecoms. Which it kind of astounded me because I didn't have a phone. Nobody had a phone. Nobody I knew in Greendykes had a phone. And the phone box in Greendykes was never working anyway. It was always bad. So the telecom thing seemed to me, hang on a minute, I could put a phone in the house. That sounds quite entertaining. Back in the 80s, as a 16-year-old boy, it was just a matter of going and getting a job,
And what year was this, roughly?
That was in 1978.
1978.
Aye. So it was literally just getting a job. And I wasn't overly worried what type of job I would get. As long as I got a job that gave me a wage and I could continue to play football and things, I was quite happy, So that was my early life, if you like.
Not so much education, more football, boxing, all sports.
Education was zero. Okay. I mean, I never once done homework. Now, don't get me wrong, my kids, I've forced them in inverted commas, I've persuaded them to go to university. So, my kids both went to uni. My daughter's a teacher, my son's a sales director in property. And although I've done that, I will say that education is the answer. And education is the way to poverty. So I've no doubt that that's the case. So for 99% of people, I would say education will get you where you want to go as a starting block. However, there's different ways to be educated, and not everybody's, primed or set up to go in universities and colleges.
Yeah, it's completely different, isn't it? Everyone has their own sort of learning styles and things as well. So I think some people find, I know myself going through that high school, I was very, very good in school. In terms of academically, I was really smart, knew a lot, was able to retain information, but when I actually came round to it, I just wasn't interested by it. I don't feel that the learning styles fit me as a person. I feel like that's a lot of the things that sort of fail people at the moment. It's sort of one way, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. If I hadn't founded Commsworld, I would not have been allowed to apply to be the CEO because I wouldn't have the qualifications. Okay, so qualifications are kind of important, don't get me wrong. And I always think, I say to people, it's like getting a couple of miles start in a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you get a couple of miles start, you still need to run, and some people may catch you up, but it does give you that couple of miles start. And at the end of the day, you see jobs advertised, you need to have an honours degree in Mongolian science or whatever it may be, before you can apply for this job. So again, education, is the important thing. But from my point of view as a kid, it never even crossed my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So first job as a telecoms engineer, what company was that for, and how did you enjoy it? Was it what what was your thoughts when you got the job?
I loved it. It was GEC Reliance, or Reliance Systems, that became GPT, so GEC Plessy, that ultimately became Siemens, so probably best known as Siemens today. I joined there, and I worked on Strowger exchanges, kind of all that stuff. So I worked on Strowger exchanges, worked down in the docks, SCI, British Pipe Cotters, the distillers, all these areas. It was good in the summer. It was pretty dodgy in the winter, trying to work in these areas. But I loved it. But what I did was I clocked in at 9 o'clock and I clocked out at 5 o'clock. I was given jobs to do in between, and I went and played football like every night. So I'd get up in the morning, go to work, be given jobs to do, or go to sites, installing things, drilling holes and walls, running cables, and I would go home at night and I would just play football, mm-hmm. or go to basketball or whatever. It's just in sport, and I done that, and my mindset was, it's interesting because my mum and dad were both cleaners in effect. My dad worked in the Black Squad in the Marine Garage in Portobello. So he worked there for 38 years, constant night shift from 10:30 at night to 6:30 in the morning. And my mother had a part-time job cleaning. They were not academic. They were brilliant. I loved them, absolutely loved them to death. And what they wanted for their kids, I had two brothers and sister, and they just wanted their kids to be happy and get a job. Mm. And as long as they were happy and got a job, and if they could get a job that was a long-term job, like in the breweries or the pits or a BT even, then they could start at 16, they could retire at 65, and they'd have a good life. That was their mindset, and that's what they put across to their kids. They used to always say you don't need to be clever, but you do need to be nice, was their motto. Mm-hmm. So that's the way I was brought up. So when I was working at GEC Reliance, a lot of the guys were going to college, going to night schools, and some of them went on to be head technicians in the police and things like that. I was just clocking out doing a job. And I was quite happy doing that for that period of my life,
You're just turning up and doing what you needed to do, really.
Yeah.
And that was, if that's 78, was that 16 years you worked at that job?
No, I worked there from 78 to 86.
Right, okay.
And then what I did was I was getting married, so I bought a flat. Right? So I bought a flat. Pressure was on. You can't just spend the money on beer and football. You need to. Right? So there's a wee bit more pressure on you. So it was a bit of a struggle with the money I was making. In fact, I was on 8,500 a year. That's what I was on by then. But I could make 10,500 by working at Land Alarms. So a lot of the guys I knew, or a number of guys I knew, had left Reliance to go and work at Land Alarms because the basic was the same, but you got guaranteed overtime. Okay, because you're on call all the time. So I went from working in telecoms to working in alarms for 2 years. And I was working, I liked the people, there was a lot of good people, but I didn't like the job. Because, for example, I was 36 hours without being in my bed because I was on call and you were all over the place. You get calls, schools have been broken into, shops have been broken into, whatever. It was just a disaster.
Did you just say, so you were on call for 36 hours without sleep?
Yeah, I was not in my bed for 36 hours.
Even that on its own, people complain at working for, I've got to do my work for 8 hours. It's like,
I'll tell you, back then, I said to my boss at the time, he was a nice guy, I said, I'm not sure this is legal because, and he said to me, shut up or you'll be sacked. I said, yeah, fine. So I made $2,500, I made 2,000 extra, which is a lot of money, 25% more money. But I was working on really, really antiquated alarm systems that were like pathetic, and it was not a satisfying job from what I've heard. So I worked there for 2 years, and that's when it all started to change. Again, I clocked in and clocked out in my mind, clocked in, clocked out, never done any training or nothing of much, clocked in, clocked out, fixed alarm systems, which is pretty basic, not that complicated. And then I met Dave McKenzie, who was my co-founder at Commsworld, who's one of my best pals, who was an international basketball player, one of Scotland's greatest ever basketball players. And I knew Dave because of the basketball. And I met Dave up the town, actually. I believe I'm at my stag night in a Black Bull doing the grass market. And I went up to the bar, and Dave was at the bar. And Dave is a big 6'3", big charismatic guy, and he's a lovely guy. And I just tried blaring to Dave and asked him what he was doing, because Dave was a salesman with Xerox, selling copiers, and he told me that he was setting up a telecom company for Murray International. No, I'd never heard of Murray International, so at that time I didn't know who David Murray was. This was in September, October 1988, and David Murray bought Rangers right at the back of it, so he became, high pro for the back of it. So what I did was, I spoke to Dave, and Dave said, I'm setting up this telecoms company, but I need a telecom engineer because I've not got a clue. I'm a salesman, right? And I said to him, and how are you going to get a telecom engineer? Literally, and Dave went, I'm not sure. I don't know how I go about that. And I said to him, I'm a telecom engineer. And he says, are you? I said, aye. So he said, well, why don't I bother? So we had a chat, and to cut a long story short, I ended up joining just me and Dave to set up a wee business within a big group, and the world changed. I mean, my entire world went upside down, because I went from clocking in, clocking out, working with base type companies, that everybody's just doing a job, right? I mean, the jobs were there. And I walked into what was an entrepreneurial circus, because I walked in a group called Dial that was fully salesmen and entrepreneurs. And there was hardly an engineer in the place. It was like hundreds of salesmen, And what I realised was that the jobs weren't there for you. There was no jobs for you. Because I said to Dave, so what we're installing and what would, and he went, well, we've not got anything. I said, what do you mean we've not got anything? Well, we need to go and find business, and then you can install it for us, and we'll go together, right? And literally, and the Dial group, the group was called Dial, that Murray International owned. And when I went for, this is true, but it's not a joke. When I went for the interview at David Murray's headquarters at the Gale, which is not there now, down at the Gale, I drove my Lander, you guys would remember, Lander van in, or estate car, the big diamonds on the side, the ladders on the roof, And I drove in and I parked beside Ferraris and Porsches and Rolls Royces, literally, in David Murray's car park. And I remember just thinking, what? I mean, I'd never physically seen these things before. So I thought, what? I just couldn't get my head around it. And when I went into his office, I mean, I've never had an interview as such. Do you know what I mean? I went into his office, and I got an interview with the guy who was MD and David's partner, Alec McDonald, who owns Next Home. So Alec McDonald, one of Scotland's greatest ever entrepreneurs. And I actually went in and got an interview, and I found it difficult to talk. I really found it difficult to talk because I was not used to that environment, and I kind of froze. And Alex said to me, Ricky, Dave really wants you to start. Could you start next week? And I said, I can't start for 3 weeks because I have to give notice. And Alex says, what if I said to you, unless you start next week, you'll lose the job? What would you say to me? I said, I would lose the job because I won't let the company down where I am. And Alex said, Ricky, that's the thing that convinced us to take you on. You realise you had that in you, if you had said, oh, I could stuff them, we'll just join tomorrow, that would have worried us, So I went there, I went to the Dial Group, and Dial Group sold copiers, right? So it was Russell Office Systems through in the West of Scotland, Dial, and they sold photocopiers. That's what they did. So, the Murray Group were creating lots of businesses. I mean, back then, David already created, a year or two after that, the Sunday Scott, he created multiple businesses, Mimtech, multiple businesses. Some would fail, some would not, because obviously David, being the entrepreneur that he was and that he does. So when I went in there, my whole mind just changed like that. Absolutely changed. And I thought, this is phenomenal. And me and Dave would literally go, we make telecalls every Friday afternoon. We try to get appointments. Dave would give me the hints how to sell. He'd give me all the spin fab, the Xerox, situation, problem, implication, need, future, advantage, benefit, all these things, how to sell. And it'd be with your technical knowledge, Ricky, you'll get people inside, but you need the sales angle and all that stuff, right? It was brilliant. And I absolutely loved it. Honestly, I absolutely loved it. And we were there for 6 years until the Murray Group sold off the Dial Group. And that was in 1994 when they sold off the Dial Group. And me and Dave decided we need to go, we need to fly the nest, we need to take the chance of going on our own,
Amazing. I want to go back a little bit to when you were talking about the interview and then getting the call afterwards saying that you have to start next week. And then you never let your employer down. That sort of going back to when you were talking about how your parents brought you up in things to be a good person, to be like a nice person. And that was you showing those qualities, which in turn basically got you that job of just being a good person. Obviously, the skill set that you had being the technician, but ultimately you were a good person, which got you that job in the first place.
Yeah, you know what, Ryan? I've never lied to people. Seriously. Mm-hmm. Now, in our industry, that's, I'm not, but I have never lied to people. Never. I have never done a dodgy deal. Never. Mm-hmm. I would never do a dodgy deal. Never. Right? I'm honest to my competitors as I am to my customers. Mm-hmm. And that's me. Right? So that's me. And I'm not going to change that. And I mean, we all know, and we've all seen all the sales scandals or whatever we want to tag them over all the years. I'd rather be poor back in green eggs than do that, And I'm not saying that it's a soft kiddie. Seriously, that's how I am. I wouldn't change under any circumstances,
Well, that just goes to show. I think that's if you look for the people that don't know, the company that Ricky founded, Commsworld, which we'll go on to, is, I believe, the biggest independent telecoms and obviously the network stuff that you guys are doing as well. I mean, it's like the whole of the UK. They're putting the fibre in for the whole of the UK. So, I mean, and I know that's a big jump to go, but all these qualities that you have is the reason that Commsworld's obviously done so well, because you're instilling the qualities into the staff that you have around you, and obviously everyone that founded Commsworld and was involved initially. I think these are the qualities that make a company work. The honesty and integrity and all these kind of things. And a lot of companies say they do it, but the proof's in the pudding. So
just the pudding, Chris. You know what? If you want longevity, it's the only way you can do it. If you want longevity and you want, a strong reputation, there is no other way. Now, of course, you need the products and services and technologies, right? Of course, you need that. But anybody can get a hold of the products and technologies today. Anybody can start up tomorrow and buy things and sell things. It's not that difficult. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's more difficult to make a success of it and do it in the right way.
100%. So how did that lead? So obviously we're up to the 1994 point when David Murray's part of the company sold out, and you were on your kind of own at that point. How did the whole Commsworld thing come about? What was the?
Well, it's quite laughable now, right? Given your age, you'll enjoy this. There was no mobile phones. There was only analog lines. There wasn't even ISDN. There was no internet, right? So there was no internet. There was no emails, right? There was only fax machines and analog lines and analog systems. And what we did is me and Dave sat and we spoke to the Murray Group. Actually, the guys were Hugh Lenny and David Horn. Right? That was the two guys we spoke to who were brilliant in the Murray Group. And what we did is we spoke to them and we said, look, you guys have got enough on your plate. Although you're going to create an office side and you're saying you may well create the telecom side, my God, the number of things you're dealing with, we believe that we'll just get in your way. It looks like there'll be a pebble in your shoe, to be honest. We're going to be probably an annoyance to the group with the number of things you've got. So to cut a long story short, we said, why don't you let us go away and we'll just set up ourselves, right, and do an MBO. And so they said, well, okay, well, make us an offer and we'll consider it. So what we did is we went back to them and said, we'll buy the business for £1. and you give us money. You help fund us because we've no money. So they said, we sell you the business for £1, but we give you money as well. And they said, yeah, that seems fair. And they were like, so how's that fair? And we're saying, well, we've not done you any problems. We've brought nothing but good things to the name. And we've seen what you guys have done. Surely you could help us, And they said, okay, we'll help you. And they did, right? So they said, we'll help you. They helped fund us, and they gave us the business for £1. Now, it was different back then. We didn't have contracted maintenance contract, and it was kind of goodwill stuff. But they gave us everything, and the complete backing for customers and all that stuff. So without that, we'd have struggled to get off the ground, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big bonus. That was a wow, right? However, interestingly, clearly we had no money. When I say no money, I'll tell you something and you'll laugh at this. When we decided we were going to set the business up, we thought, right, we'll go to Company's House. So Company's House, there was nothing online, right? So you couldn't do anything online. There was no internet. So we went to Company's House in Queen Street. It was me and Dave, and we said, we want to open a company, we want to set up a company.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, yeah, okay, there's a form on the form. So company name. Well, we didn't have a company name, right? We just thought, can we open a company? So he said, well, you need to register a name. So we said, right, okay. And they're like, well, you need to have a name. So we didn't have a name. We didn't have Commsworld, right? So what they did is the woman said, you can look at the old microfiche and you can look at all the names that have been disbanded or that are available, right? And what I'd said to Dave is we need something that's got communications in it. So what we did is we went through the old microfiche, right? I can't remember how you used it now, right? And we found Commsworld, which was, if I remember it, I think it was a magazine in London, and the name of the company had been disbanded 6 months before or so. And we just looked at each other and went, because everything that we tried to find, for example, we tried to find Comtech and different, and they were all taken, it was like they're all taken. So that's how we got the name. We then said, right, we filled a form out and said, can we register that? And she said, yeah, that'll be, I think it was either 27 quid or 37 quid, I can't remember. And we didn't have 27 or 37 quid. Seriously, right? And we said, right, so can we reserve it? And she said, you can't even reserve it. You need to pay 27 or 37 quid, whatever it is. Or it's not likely anybody will take the name. You can come back. So what I did, I said to Dave, I've got mortgage money in the bank, but I think I've just got enough for the mortgage. I'm sure if I take 37 quid out, I might be in soapy and the wife will batter me. I said, but anyway, so I went we literally went to the bank, took the cash at the bank and came back round and said, right, okay, we'll register the name. Because what we were doing is we were talking to different funding organisations and we needed to get £50,000. Now, £50,000 back then was double or treble what my house was worth.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say 15 or 50?
50.
50.
We needed 50. We were getting good advice. We can touch on it. We're getting really good advisors, really good advice, right? So we can touch that later on. But it was, you guys need to have £50,000. I'm telling you, right? So I'll explain later on why. So the basics were we were raising more than double or treble my house was worth at the time, which was not easy and we had no security. I mean, it was really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So Money International helped us. Create More Opportunities Trust, which today is Create, they were a social enterprise. And Create More Opportunities Trust were put in place because when the mines closed and the breweries all closed in Craigmore, so the fort, if you go up to the fort,
mm-hmm.
well, that used to be a mine, right? So when the developers bought the land, part of the agreement was they would put money back in the local community to try to stimulate employment. So basically, Create More Opportunities Trust, that I sat on the board many years later, they were there to try to help people in Craigmore to get a job,
mm-hmm.
start up or do something. That was the job. So basically, they had created some offices and things, units. So basically, they funded us. Money International funded us, and the bank had this thing. I can't remember because it's a long time ago. The bank had this government matching thing. So the bank gave us £10,000 and we were only liable for 2.5 years or something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we ended up getting enough, because remember, we were bringing 3 full-time staff in with us.
Mm-hmm.
And this was weeks away, and we were paying their wages, and they had mortgages, and we were telling them it was fine.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Although
A lot of pressure.
I was being honest and saying, look, we'll get there. It's not easy. To their credit, I mean, we started with 6 people ultimately, and 4 are still, including me, 4 are still there. All these years later, 27 years later.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that's really impressive.
So that's kind of what we did. And then what we did at Comms, and what me and Dave did, was go and knock on doors, and we had a couple of sales guys. Now, one of the big things that helped us is we had built up a great reputation as good people. We had built up customer bases, not contracted, right? They were not. So every month we had to clear the board and start again. Every month we had nothing, right? Mm-hmm. And indeed, every month we had to get the money as time went on to pay the wages, and we had to do the deals and agree deals with people in order to get the cash to pay the wages, right? Although it was really good fun. I know it sounds silly, it was good fun then. But probably the biggest thing we had is we had built reputation. So our first 2 customers back then are still our customers today, 27 years later. East and Western Motor Group and Finlayson Wagner Black, FWB, and the headhunters. East and Western Motor Group, Douglas Brown, the guy that owns it, me and Dave went to see Douglas, and we said, no, we're leaving this big, huge company. Would you still deal with us on our own? And Douglas said, I deal with people, and you guys have never let me down. Why would I go elsewhere? Unless you ever let me down, I promise you, as far as I know, I will continue to do business. And we know the size of East and Western Group now compared to it was back then. So they guys have stood by us every single minute, every single day, every single year for 27 years. And FWB done the same, and a few others. Okay, so we still have customers today that are over 20-year-old, and I mean lots and lots and lots, hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
We want to build at the start, which is really difficult.
That's so impressive. I knew some of that stuff already, that there'd been customers, but when you actually say it like that, a customer staying with a company in any type of industry for 27 years is a long time, to commit when there's so many other companies out in the market, and other people can do it cheaper, and there's so many other things. I mean, that really shows the level of service that needs to go into it, and the commitment that goes into it, or went into Commsworld initially when you started it, and obviously still to this day. You kind of talking about the first couple of years were hard. What was it like as Commsworld started to grow, throughout maybe the 90s and the latter 90s, early 2000s? Well,
it does. This is when it becomes interesting from an entrepreneurial business point of view, mm-hmm. right? Because when we, in 1990, it was brought to my attention. See, back then, we wanted to be as good as Scotia Telecom, right? Scotia Telecom were in Glasgow, and we used to say, one day we'll be as good as them. And we knew the people, they were good guys, right? One day we'll be as good as them. And so in 1990, it was brought to my attention that there was an opportunity, perhaps, for Commsworld to buy Scotia Telecom. Okay, because what I did in 2000 is I started to network with people, started to get advisors, talk to people, started to understand how businesses grow. So when it was brought to my attention, there was a possibility that we could buy the biggest competitor we had, and one that I admired greatly at the time. I thought, well, how's that? This is interesting. And this, I think, is where things started to change. In 2000, we hit £1 million. So we set up in 94, and 6 years later, we broke £1 million turnover. In our first year, we done 300,000. We lost £5,000 in our first financial year, and then we hit £1 million, and which is obviously a marker. It's like 1, 5, 10. Mm-hmm. So what happened was, it was brought to my attention that there's a chance you could do it, and the reason for that is, how can I put it? Scotia had lost their way a bit, and what I mean by that is they had lost the drive within the business. The sales director had walked out and left them, and quite rightly. I mean, I know Keith really well. So he had left them because they were actually owned elsewhere, and the owner had been less than honourable, I think, with Keith. So Keith and the sales team left. So Scotia started running just as an engineering team. So the engineering side took over the sales side, and the sales side was subservient to the engineering side. And that had a major impact on their sales. And it's funny because my background in engineering, I used to always think, engineering should ultimately be the important thing, but without sales, you're dead, So, in fact, I was told before, a twat is an engineer that moves to sales, is a techie with a target. Because
techie with a target, yeah.
Techie with a target, 9 out of 10 on the work, because it's a different thing. It's different. But anyway, so the point is, we were offered to have a chat with them, and I knew the guys. So cut a long story short, we ended up buying them. Okay, so we bought the company, we brought them in. It gave us a real good presence in Glasgow. We were planning to open in Glasgow anyway. We were in the process of opening an office in Glasgow. But clearly, the engineering expertise that Scotia had was quite deep and varied, and they had a lot of customers. So the two companies came together really well.
And this is just at the time when the internet, obviously that 2000, 1999, the internet was just really starting to boom at this point, So.
Things were starting to open up, yeah. There were the dot-com crash, 2000, the market dropped 25% a year for 3 or 4 years, which caused a bit of stir. We raised money, right? So it's like we raised back then quite serious money. So the basics are that started us and started my mind more on entrepreneur, how do you grow as opposed to how do you survive, if you like, prior to 2000. And that's what happened. So we started building the business and we were doing really well, Chris. And then, we touched on, I know you didn't know until Sean mentioned it. In 2005, 2006, I got cancer. In 2005, Dave, my best pal, my partner and my mentor, for want of a better term, I love him to death. He wanted to sell because he had family issues, personal issues, and he thought, and things were changing. And you're right, internet was coming along, so things were changing. So what we did is we basically done a deal where Davey could sell it. Okay, that's what we done. I wanted to do more network-related stuff, internet-related stuff. So Davey was ready to sell out. We agreed on the deal. And then in January 2006, I got cancer. So when I got cancer, you can get the hankies in it. I was given 6 months to live without treatment, right? So if you don't get treatment, you will die in 6 months. And I remember sitting my wife, like, just, it's a bizarre thing that obviously somebody says that to you. And when I said to the guy, what if I get treatment? Like, hang on. Because I had to push him. He said, I had to push him. Will I live or will I die? When I pushed him, my wife was saying, Ricky, stop it, you know what I mean? I said to the guy, you need to tell me, I need to know before I walk out this building. So the guy says, without treatment, you die in 6 months. And I said, right, okay, what about with treatment? And he said, with treatment, he says, you're young. I was 44, so you're young and you're strong. There's a fair chance, you're probably in the best position that you could be given what you've got. He said, I would say it's 50-50 whether you would live or die. But it's horrendous treatment. It will take a long time, And I said, okay, fine. That's all I need to know, So when I went away, and obviously I phoned Dave, and Dave's deal was done. He had done the deal, right? It was done. We went through dummy sales and all types of things to get proper values, so that me and him weren't conflicted in it. So Dave was ready to go. Indeed, we could have pressed the button for him to get his money to leave. Now, Dave said, he came to my house and he said, I will not leave until you come back in. I don't care how long it takes in. But until you come back in the office, I'm not leaving. Which was good, because if Dave had left, and I was there, it's not that we were a good team, but it had been a wee bit leaderless, So Dave, to his credit, said, I'll run the business and I'll keep it going in the way that it was planned to go. Right? So I came back in 2007, but I wasn't in a good way. I mean, I lost 3 stone. I wasn't in a good way. But what was interesting, when I was in the house, for the first 5-6 months, I really wasn't well. Like, I was sleeping 22 hours a day. I was on morphine, honestly. I was getting chemotherapy and I got a neck dissection and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So when I started getting better, obviously, what did I do? I went on the internet. And that's when I started to learn about education as well, to be blunt. And I know that sounds silly, 44-year-old. But I looked at the internet and I thought, shit, this is definitely going through the roof. The things I want to do is right. We need in that space, So when I came back, when Davey, again, because of the weak position I was in and because of the business is, because Davey obviously wanted to leave, then people were being opportunistic and wanting to buy the business, right? And fine, I mean, nothing wrong with that, And Dave was saying, Ricky, and by this stage I had no financial money, I was financially secure, So Dave was saying, right, look, maybe you're better bailed out, mate. It's horrendous what you've been through. And I said to Dave, nah, because what I said is, I'm playing with my winnings now. Now, when I was a lad in Greendice, my mum used to win at the bingo and say she's playing with the winnings, right? So if she won money, it's not her money. She used to go and buy us fish suppers because it was additional money, it was extra money, it wasn't her housekeeping money. So she was playing with her winnings. That's what she still would say. I'm playing my winnings. So it doesn't matter if I lose it, or I spend it, whereas she couldn't do that with housekeeping money. I said to Dave, but I'm playing my winnings. And also, if I go for this and fail, I'll be happy that I went for it. If I didn't go for this, I'll play in my mind forever. If I just sell it now, which I could have, make good money, it'll play in my mind.
Wow, that's incredible. Going through all that stuff, it was. Am I right in saying it was throat cancer?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can say. What did you say? A neck dissection? Is that what you said?
Neck dissection. Yeah.
What actually is that?
They take it. But I got. I'll give you Corey. You want to go into details? So I was told, but when I got the treatment, I was told the treatments have been 100%. Right? It could not have went better. We cannot find a bit of cancer anywhere. All the scans we do. The only option we've got is giving you a neck dissection. It's your choice. You either take one or you don't. And I'm saying, what's the pros and cons? Well, the cons are that it's quite horrendous. Like you end up with half a neck, and pretty colours, and we take half your neck away. But what we do is we take lymph nodes away because the cancer went into my lymph nodes. So they took away 22 lymph nodes, and they found 2 microscopic specks of cancer in 2 lymph nodes, which would have came back at a later stage. So just well got that done. But the choice was, what do you want to do? Because the treatment seemed to be successful.
I bet I can only imagine what it must have felt like when they said, cancer free or whatever that day was, when it was like properly over, because coming from the doctor saying you've got 6 months to live to being like, that's it. All.
Well, I look back, it's 15 years ago now, and it's bizarre. But time passes fast, and my dad used to always say to me, life's not a rehearsal, and time passes fast, and make the most of what you've got. Although I wouldn't necessarily say he necessarily lived by what he said, but he was right. And I mean, it's 15 years ago. It seems like it was yesterday. I mean, it literally seems like it's yesterday. So you do have to get up and go and get on with things and do things,
Mm-hmm. Sure, yeah. So how did that lead to? So you've obviously gone through that dreadful, horrible experience, but thankfully, made it out alive, and after the treatment, and you had the thing on the neck, the dissection, and then you were obviously on the internet. Where did that lead on from there? In terms of you're actually starting to look at the business and saying the things you wanted to do were right.
Yeah.
And pushing Commsworld forward. Yeah.
So this is where I think it's quite interesting, because I've always said I've had good advisors, literally from day one. I say a thing that people say I shouldn't say it, right? But I will say it and openly say it. I always say, if I'm the smartest guy in the room, we're in trouble. Right? So if I'm the smartest guy in the room, I say to my guy, if I'm the smartest guy in this room, we're in trouble. Because I've always, looked at building people around me, getting good advisors, getting people that are better than me. I've always had that very few, if any, are technology guys, right? So I've had a few mentors, for want of a better term. I mean, Dave was one. I mean, I absolutely idolised Dave. I love him to death, And Dave was a right charismatic salesman, where I was the polar opposite, at the time. So I've over the years, I took a lot of his attributes across to me. But I brought in Malcolm McPherson, who was senior partner at what is Irish Goddard today, and was HBJ back then. I think what year would it be? Probably like 98, something like that. So when we bought Scotia, I asked Malcolm to be our chairman, and the advice is beyond about, and also the introductions. Malcolm brought a guy on board called Bill McCall, and Bill's chair at FWB, and Bill came on for 5 years. And Bill used to say to me, and he is phenomenal, honestly. Bill used to say to me, Ricky, see when you're selling telephone systems, right? You've got a product that's relatively simple, okay? It's relatively expensive and it's got a high margin, right? He said, it reminds me of the PCs that used to be sold in America. He said, but what happened there is they become quite complex, they become quite cheap, and the margin is low. So you'd have to sell up 10 times more as time goes on to actually make the same money. And he also said, when I look at your market, Ricky, I don't understand technology, but I look at your market and I look at, the amount of money that people give BT and the likes, and they hate them. I compare it to the amount of money that the same businesses give you, and it's tiny, and they love you. There's an opportunity there. But the opportunity to compete with BT was really difficult. Okay, as in, we've seen Telewest try it, NTL tried it, Atlantic Telecom, they all went bust. And they spent zillions, right? They spent big bucks. So they all went bust. But Bill was on our board till 2005. And then he had been on 5 years, and he stepped down. And Ian Blackford, so, everyone knows Ian, the Scotsman that shouts at Boris Johnson. Ian came on board, again introduced with Malcolm. And Ian's background was equities, so he was managing director of Deutsche Equities. And he was not a politician back in the 80s. And I would talk to Ian about the opportunity to compete with the big boys, okay? Because to succeed, you need to compete with the big boys. And in Scotland, 98.2% of commercial businesses, of which there is about 360,000, are less than 50 people. So they only have a certain budget. So you have to sell a lot of widgets to a lot of people to scale the business in Scotland. So you have to sell a lot of telephone systems to a lot of businesses to scale. And how you could actually get the economics to work with the operational side is a debate, right? It's not easy, right? So the reality is, what you need to do to scale is you have to go into the big game. You have to compete with the big players. BT, in particular, had a hold on that because you had to sell their services. I mean, you'll do it, Chris. In Kovo, you will sell their services as an agent, and they will give you a percentage of the money because it's not worthwhile them doing it, right? It's not worthwhile going to that market. When you go up to the bigger market and you go to sell their services, you still have to sell their services. So it retails at £1, they give you 80p, you sell 81p, and they sell it direct at 60p. You're goose, right? Because you're having to use their assets. So my view was, what if we didn't need to use their assets? If we didn't need to use their assets, then we could generally compete on a level playing field. If we're using their assets, obviously they can, understandably from their point of view, they can control it. So you end up just acting as an agent. Even if you win big deals, you get a wee percentage, it's not yours, and you're left outside, and you've done all the hard work. So when I spoke to Ian and I spoke about potentially building their own networks, Ian said to me, Atlantic Telecom failed, Telewest failed, NTL failed, and they spent, thus failed. These guys spent billions, right? You guys didn't have billions, and nobody would back it. It's ridiculous. And I said, yeah, but, and this was a few years on, clearly, right? Mm-hmm. But I said, yeah, but there's more and more people starting to give you access to raw layer 1 fibre in the ground, and it's no BT. Then you can compete them. Okay, so that's what kicked off. That's what kicked off us building our networks. But going back to the question of the subject of good advisors, when I came back in 2007 and Davey was leaving, right? Ian Blackford, right? Ian had retired from Deutsche Equities and he was doing his own consultancy. And he was based over in Amsterdam. And when I come back in 2007, I was now saying we're going to build our own networks, right? So what did we know about building networks? Not a lot. We were telephone system guys. We were core telecom guys, for want of a better term. We understood, of course we understood, because we sold networks, but they were BTs or Virgins or whatever, right? So we understood them, but we did not have that deep knowledge, right? We did not have that understanding and ability. So what happened is we were going to, at the start, we were going to buy a network company. That's what we're doing. RBS were giving us several millions of pounds to buy a company for Davey to leave, right? And RBS were taking a 10% equity stake in the business. So Ian Blackford phoned me in summer, June, July, whatever it was, of that year, 2007, from Amsterdam. And he said to me, Ricky, I've seen an email. You're ready to sign this deal off with the bank? Yeah, it's all done. Ricky, you can't. You have to stop it right now. And I said to him, why is that? And Ian said to me, the banks are going bust, Ian Blackford. And I went, sorry? He went, the bank's going bust. And I thought, you're in the wacky backy, mate, in Amsterdam. How can the banks go bust, you know? And Ian said to me, Ricky, I trust you in technology. Do you trust me in banking and finance? I said, right, the banks are going bust, stop it. And stop it now. So I said to him, but Davey's going to get X money, right? And he went, we'll do it private, Ricky. And I went, but how will we do it private? I'll do it. I'll bring people, you worry about it. And it'll be controlled. You trust me? I said, of course I do. Right. So I cancelled at the bank, who weren't very happy. And we raised, we looked at raising private money. We raised enough to give Davey. And Ian said, that acquisition, drop it. Why? Drop it. Because the bank's going bust, the world's going to go into free fall, and you cannot allow the business to be dragged into that world. You have to keep it the way, Ricky. So I took his advice, much to my bemusement, to be blunt. And in 2008, the banks went bust. I phoned Ian. I said, by the way, Ian, I've spoke to RBS. I've spoke to the same guy that we're doing the deal with. I asked him what happened, and he said Commsworld would be dead right now, be gone, because the bank would have called their money in immediately and folded us. And Ian said, I told you, Ricky, you know. Now, what Ian said is, and this is the thing that deflated me a wee bit in 2008, Ian said, Ricky, your aspirations are correct. However, now's not the time. You're going to have to sit back. The bank's going to be in a bad way for a long, long time, and it's going to affect customers, going to affect a lot of people. And I said, how long is a long, long time? He said, it could be 10 years. And I went, what? No, Ian, come on. He said, Ricky, please, you have to sit back now. It transpired that it was 5 years. It was 2012 when we started to say, hang on a minute. And also what happened there, the internet was growing and growing. Ethernet connections were growing and growing. The big players were delivering them, but delivering them really badly. So the opportunity was opening up. I was going around, and I mean dozens upon dozens of customers, apologising for the BTs and the Virgins for the service they were delivering, by explaining that I was a travel agent. You know, it's not my fault their planes were crashing. I'm the travel agent. It's not my fault. And if you want to go straight to the plane, it will still crash. So again, fortunately, all my customers, everyone stayed on board, but they all said, okay, you're the advisor, you're bringing these guys to us, you're putting our business in jeopardy, right? Every single one of them. And so I was, the ones I spoke about before, I've known for years, they believed me, they trusted me. And I said, if you go out on your own, you'll be jumped from the frying pan into the fire. We can manage these things for you. You cannot manage them yourself. And it's an inherent issue that these big players have. So what that did is that caught, I mean, my FD, Graham St. John, who is phenomenal, right? The most important guy in our business. Graham was doing monthly reports to our board on the risk of the carriers to Commsworld's business and to our customers' business because it was so poor. So in a strange way, that forced us and accelerated us to look at building our own networks. And what we did was, because we had no money, not the money you need, right? To let you understand, if you're going to build your own networks, you're going to put fibre in the ground. It's 100 quid a metre, right? £100 a metre. if you're going to put in do down yourself. Now, at this stage, City Fibre had come along, and I was talking to them, and they would put the stuff in the ground at their cost. They would then hand it to us raw, and we'd build the whole thing. So we'd control the whole thing. So what we did is we planned to do that, and we needed to find a way of plugging the technology gap that we had, and that was Charlie Bossell, who's our CTO, who's a genius in networks. And Charlie was a spin-out from Napier. He had his company called Fluency, which was just a young company. He had a handful of customers. He had a very, very small network. And Charlie came in 2012, and from then on in, we have now built the largest privately funded network in the UK. And we now have FTSE 200, FTSE 100 customers on it. We have 4 of the largest councils in Scotland on it. And we control the whole thing end to end ourselves. So we built something, and we've done that with no money. No money. So we didn't borrow any money, which people can't quite get. Wow. Because what we did is we managed to do it by winning big public sector contracts where the public sector had ways of funding things. And when we've done it with big enterprise companies, they would fund certain things for us because they needed that. So they would fund it because they couldn't get. So we basically used our customers to help us fund it. And then all the profits we made, because we went from 6 million to 20 million, and we were making 4 million EBITDA with £6 million in the bank. We were growing at a rate. And what we did is we put the money back in. We funded the stuff ourselves. I never brought a Ferrari. I never put my wage up. I never took bonuses. We just kept building the business. So it was a bit opportunistic, Chris. You know what I mean? If you look at it, but it was recognising a problem and having the gumption to go and try, even though everybody said that's ridiculous. You will burst your company if you do that.
That's because to build up a company and to be at the 6 million mark in turnover or sales, and then to take such a risk that the company could go bust, especially after only 5 years after the credit crunch and all the rest of it. I mean, for businesses, we're still, I can't remember it very well, but I can imagine only 5 years. That's still pretty soon after that all happened. Then taking the risk to go and build a network when it's £100 per metre. I mean, that's and the chance that it might not have worked as well is really impressive.
I think the big thing, Chris, is the £100 a metre is what City Fibre and now others paid. We didn't need to do that. They would do that. So they would actually, when we won Edinburgh Council in 2015. So if you look at Edinburgh Council, Glasgow, so Glasgow Council, Edinburgh Council, Scottish Borders Council, Renfrewshire Council, every single building they have, whether it be a library, a school, whether it be city chambers, whatever, right? Every single thing they have is on our network, completely under our control, with our security protection, the whole thing, in our cloud, everything. We've delivered 30,000 phones in our cloud across these councils. And City Fibre to do Edinburgh probably cost them 15 million or something up front, right? For them to do. But these guys are entrepreneurial. They want to take on the big players. They're now backed by Goldman Sachs. They've got $2.5 billion from Goldman Sachs. So what they're seeing is the internet is driving investment, and it's going away from the old telecom world, the PST and network, Chris, as we know it, that gets switched off in 2025. They stopped selling any of the stuff from 2023. So ISDNs, they're all gone. So the old network that was owned by BT and the likes, that was their asset, it's not worth anything, it was gone. And that's the change in the market.
Yeah. Actually, like now that you're able to reflect back on it, it's probably quite good, because I can imagine at the time a lot of people are thinking this might not work, or just not seeing the vision, to Chris, where it's at now. Chris,
in something like October 2014, we sat around my board table, seriously, with Malcolm, Ian, all my board guys, and they all voted against it going on because they were frightened. Because you're right, you would take the business. If you continued down that route, you could take the business out. And we had that discussion. And what I did was I said to our guys, I said, well, look, in my opinion, we're doing it, right? I'm just saying that I didn't own Commsworld. We all owned it. We're all shareholders. I mean, I had the largest shareholding as an individual, but I didn't own it because I'd shared it all with the guys. I brought the best guys in. Come on, let's all get in together. If I make £1, you make money. You know, if I've got a share, you've got a share. Come on, we'll all do it together. We'll all succeed, or we'll all fail together, right? But what I said is, if we don't carry on with this, I'll sell the business, and I'll make some decent money. You guys will make a bit, but we've wasted our time, right? If we continue, and we're successful, this will change. 6 guys around the board table became multi-millionaires, right? So I said, if we continue, the prize is there. The worry was, manana, like the guys understandably were nervous, right? They all voted against going on. Malcolm, my chairman, who's honestly brilliant, Malcolm said, right, Ricky, when do you say it's not worked? Or when do you say it's worked? Give me a date. And I said August 2015, because that's when the Edinburgh Council deal came in or not.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was convinced, well, everybody told us it was impossible on it, like, because we were not technically allowed to bid for it, first and foremost. So we weren't even allowed to bid. So how are you going to even allowed to bid? So we had to figure ways around it. Right? and the way around it was by partner, and we partnered with CGI. So what we did is we were able to evidence that we could make a dramatic difference to the councils, particularly education, because we put gigabit connections into the schools, full-blown gigabit, two live gigabit connections in every secondary school, 200 or 400 meg on a gig in every primary school. And these schools had 20 megs and things on copper-based technologies. And we said we could do all that and everything else in the council, everything else, at a fraction of what BT were charging today for the old PSTN network. And what we said is, what BT will do, or others, is they will charge you. And we said the investment will come in private. It won't cost you private investment, and it'll bring competition to the site. If you don't do that, you will need to pay for the investment at a later stage. And you will need the investment, and you need to pay for it. So we had a compelling reason that people had to look at it. But here's an interesting thing, Chris, right? So when we won the deal, right, in 2015, and we sat around the board table again, and obviously we're all quite chuffed and relieved, and it was hard. I mean, it was difficult. And I was asked for my thoughts, and I said that success has 1,000 fathers, and failure is an orphan. Because if we had failed, I'd have been on my own, it'd have been my fault. Now that we've succeeded, we're all fathers. We're all involved. And I said that to the guys, and they're all like, "Oh, I didn't give you that shit going." I said, but if we had failed, it'd have been he's destroyed, destroyed it all. We've succeeded. Oh, we've all succeeded. But that's what leadership's about, Chris. Do you know what I mean? It's taking responsibility and bringing people in. And ultimately, if it's your call, ultimately, if you're the one that's going, I demand, or that's the route we're going, that is your responsibility ultimately. Yeah. But you can't do it without the team.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like, just from everything you've said, one of the key points for Commsworld success has been around the advisors you've had and the advice and the help from other people that have been able to help. And I agree. One of the reasons that I've been able to do everything I've done and Incovo's worked and all the rest of it is because of other people, not because of anything I've done, because of the advice and listening to other people. And I really do believe that is the shortcut and the key to having a good career or a business or whatever it is anybody wants to do, is having the right people around you. Sometimes it's difficult to find as well, because a lot of people will lie and all the rest of it. But when you find people that you can listen to and you can get good advice from, that to me is the cornerstone to having anything good, is the other people that have experienced everything else and have the advice that they can share. So.
Yeah, no, Chris, honestly, I'm still the laddie for Green Days. I'm not being flippant, right? I'm not being flippant when I say that. My pals, I'm still same Ricky for Green Day. I'm no different. But what I've been able to do is to bring people around me and the advisors. Without the advisor, Commsworld wouldn't have lasted. It's not even a debate. I mean, the last advisor I brought in is now our CEO today. When I retired, Steve Langmead. The biggest change in the last 10 years is Steve Langmead. Steve was head of Atos for Scotland, Ireland and Wales, and he was the CEO for Capital for Scotland, and he's just phenomenal. And I went to Steve and asked him to help me. I said, Steve, can you help me? This is what we do. Can you help me? And at the time, most, if not all, of my board were against it. And I said to Steve, this thing's what we do. But what I've done as well is I reached out to Anne Budge, right? So I'm a Hibs fanatic, and obviously Anne's hurt.
That must have been difficult.
I know. Anne came in for her own back. She spent 4 hours in my office. I said, this is what I want to do. This is my plans. And Anne gave me advice. And she said, Ricky, what you need to do is you need to build a Chinese wall, for want of a better term, between your current business and your public sector business. Because if you take that wall away and you bring your existing guys across, they will fail there and they'll not do any business there and your whole thing will collapse. And the reason I asked Anne is I said to Anne that she created Newell and Budge, and Newell and Budge is the only proper SME small business that's scaled really big without artificial acquisitions, kind of stuff. And I also spoke to Tom Flocker at Capital Copiers, Capital Solutions. And, Tom's been a customer again for 20 years and I really like him. And I asked Tom for advice and it was the same advice. So it was, it's going to take you a number of years. And unless you give it the number of years to either fail or succeed, it won't work. You need to give it that time, but you need to be very, very strict in how you do it and how you monitor it. You need to be really strong. And Steve Langmead is just phenomenal. So when Steve came in, so you're right, Chris. I look at Bill McCall, Malcolm McPherson, Ian Blackford, even advice. One of the best places I got for inspiration advice, Onshore Exchange, Chris van der Kuyl, Brian Williamson, Jim McCall. I loved going to the Onshore Exchange things. Honestly, I loved it. Not the big showy thing at Gleneagles, but that was fine. But I used to go out of hours. I used to go to the round tables, the dinners they would have. So an evening with Jim McCall, an evening with Chris van der Kuyl, an evening with Willie Hockey, an evening with whoever. And there'd be a dozen people around the table. And so Jim McCall would talk about how to grow by acquisitions, things like that. So I would go to these things religiously. And every table I sat, I would have customers. Right? We showed us the spread of customers I had. And I always remember Jim McCall saying, how are you going to scale Commsworld, Ricky? Because it was all about scale and how do you grow your business, right? From entrepreneurs who would tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly in their 8 careers, literally. Tom Farmer, Stuart Milne, Stuart Milne, these guys. So I said, well, our problem is we are competing against the biggest one that is like Barry McGuigan trying to fight Mike Tyson. It just gets battered every time, right? We're really struggling. And BT are too big, and he said, but that's brilliant, no, because everybody hates them. And if you can break into that, I presume your customers would all want to leave them, yeah, right? You need to find a way. Chris van der Kuyl used to say to me, about Chris used to say, Ricky, there's a chance you can go for the guys. Brian Williamson, these guys. So I would go to these things a lot. And when I'd go, before I went up, I was deflated because things were difficult. And I'd sit with these guys. Now, none of them gave me real advice compared to, like, say, Malcolm or Ian. They didn't give me detailed advice. But it was, think about it. Look at what he done, look at what she done. You know what I mean? They gave you that confidence. So I agree, you need advisors that you can trust. I mean, the interesting thing is if you're a joiner, right, you don't need an advisor when you tell you to hang a door, right? So if you're a telecom guy, you don't really need an advisor to tell you about telecoms. You know what I mean? You need, more rounded advice, and that more rounded advice is more critical than people realise, I think.
So, how many employees does Commsworld have today? How many sites, offices have you guys got?
We have about 100 employees, 105, something like that.
So, I just wanted to kind of summarise that there, because I'm thinking about it, and for the people that haven't heard of Commsworld or haven't heard of Ricky before, it's like you grew up in an area that is like a council like that. I believe Green Dykes is basically like majority of it is like council housing basically.
Yeah. It was all council when I was a kid.
All council with and then you get your kind of first job. You do different types of jobs, and then through meeting the right people and taking the opportunity, you start a company. £27. You have to take your money for the mortgage out to pay to start the company.
When my wife hears this, she might know it's not fine. I'm not sure I ever told her. So.
And then you go on to what is Commsworld turnover at now?
We'll be hitting 25 million now.
25 million, 105 employees, and multiple sites in the UK, and now rivaling like Vodafone and BT for all their network stuff. I mean, that's pretty incredible to. And it, like you're saying, it's all these key points. He's like, there's not one thing. It's all these individuals along the way and all the different experiences that you've had, whether it be having the cancer or noticing the research you've done while you were going through that recovery process and the internet, and then just taking that massive risk. Even with the banks, I'm just so impressed by the story and the risk taking that went on, and the how many times Commsworld could have gone bust. And it hasn't, You know what
I say, Chris, right? Business for life, right? Let's be honest. You have to roll with the punches. At the end of the day, everybody gets cancer or is affected by everybody, right? Gets cancer or is affected by cancer. So it's no, a shame for Ricky. That's what happens. Do you know what I mean? It's no. I mean, I'm an atheist, right? So it's not a big thing. This guy going, we'll give him cancer today, and we'll give that lassie's cancer tomorrow. It's what happens in life, and it's how you respond to things. It's having a positive attitude. It's every cloud, and my God, there's clouds, right? But they'll have a silver lining. Do you know what I mean? And nobody's picking on you. You know what I mean? You just need comment. But one of the things that people say, then you were lucky you had the opportunity, which in one sense is true. But believe me, everybody gets an opportunity. Whether you act on it is up to you.
Mm-hmm. How and this is obviously as we start to wrap things up now, and we kind of start to pick out the advice and stuff like that. And a lot of people, I believe, do have opportunities, and some people might say, "Oh, I'm not ready to take it on. I don't feel like I'm ready for it." What would you say? And using the example that could be maybe not, but that could be the one opportunity that could have led on to something really big for that individual, but could have easily been forgotten about, or thought, I'll pick it up in a year, or I'll do it when I've finished uni, or that kind of thing, But when there's a real opportunity there, what would you say to those, kind of people?
Well, it's like, obviously your dad with the boxing, so it's I could have been a contender, but you weren't, right? I say to people, if you don't try it, you'll never know, right? So if you don't take the putt, it'll never go in, and it'll never miss because you'll never do it, right? So I think if I look back, people should trial things. They should be more adventurous, right? Now clearly there's a balance, right? I wouldn't advise people. For example, today I wouldn't go, well, I'll put everything that. I mean, you could argue that I put Commsworld everything on black at the casino, like Commsworld's on black, hope the line's black. Well, Commsworld has today with the value of it. You wouldn't take Commsworld and put on black. Do you know what I mean? You, like that'd be ridiculous, right? But what you would do is trial different things. What we do in Commsworld, by the way, we've had half a dozen other companies that didn't work out. Nobody probably even knows, but we trialed them. We tested them. They weren't going to kill us. Do you know what I mean? But if they've done well, they're done really well. So the one big success that people see, and the one big success within it, which is the network we built and one in the public sector, we tried 100 things, and 88 of them might have failed, right? And a dozen might have been okay, and then one's really good.
This is something that me and Chris talk about all the time, is pushing yourself to try loads of different things, to figure out that thing that you can then take forward and do for the rest of your life, or not the rest of your life, but find that you need to try loads of different things to find that one thing that makes you.
One of the things that, I come from Green Dykes, right? I come from Craigmore. My office is still there. My head office is still in the same place it was in, right? I'm proud to come to Greendics. I'm proud to come for Craigmore. I keep saying to people, it's not where you're from, it's where you're going. Doesn't matter. And again, if you went to Eton, right, or you went to Edinburgh University and you've got an honours degree in Outer Mongolian science, yeah, you might be 2 or 3 miles ahead in the marathon. That doesn't mean you can't go in the marathon. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And of course, I would only add that I do say people education. You know, if I had a magic wand, when I met some of the guys I work with, I'd love to have been better educated. But if I had been, I'd have probably balls up. So I'm happy I wasn't. Do you know what I mean? But my advice, I done it to my kids. No, you have to go to university, which was against the grain for it because there's no in my mind. I'm a right socialist guy, but it's like, no, you have to because you need that start in the marathon. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I definitely agree that education, I just feel like the education system in the UK, especially in primary and high school, isn't as good as it could be. You know, it's been the same for the last 100 years in terms of what people are getting taught, you know, now. So,
I mean, if you've got an honours degree in Outer Mongolian politics, really? It's like, really? Or you're taught that you can pass exams, right? Really? I mean, I've always thought, even see when it's like when I was a kid, you sat over it at the end. To me, people should be measured across what they do for the period and then advanced. Not you sit an exam and pass it or fail it. I've always thought it strange because people that I know learn how to answer the questions. That's it.
Yeah.
It's a big culture around passing the exam. You know, the student or the person that's learning is, you know, the determination is based on whether they pass or fail the exam rather than what they've actually learned. You know, during the time, you know, it's obviously more important about what you learn rather than if you pass or fail an exam. I mean, but I suppose everyone's got their own opinion on how.
I mean, correct. I would say that I've had and I've got a phenomenal education, but I've not got an honours degree in Outer Mongolian politics.
Yeah. No, it's interesting to see it from that point of view, and I feel like a lot of people that are, you know, a lot of the people I'm inspired by haven't had an education. You know, almost everyone haven't had the type of education, you know, the university type education, and a lot of people it's just been trying things and risk taking, and like you say, being adventurous. And if it fails, and it's not even if that certain thing fails, it's like you say, the people don't know that there was 100 other things that failed in the background.
I mean, don't get me wrong, right? I'm glad, or I'm pretty sure that the surgeon who operated on me had a PhD in cancer, right? So I'd rather that than was an entrepreneur. So I put my hands up and say, I'd rather, he said, well, I had a bash at the last 99, it didn't work. I'll have a bash at you, you know? So there is a few variants there, but as a general rule, Chris, I agree with you, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally agree that for those type of professions, having the right education is important, but I'm talking more so from a business entrepreneurial, you know, point of view. But yeah, 100% a doctor that's dealing with throat cancer should definitely have a PhD. You know, definitely. I really enjoyed that conversation, Ricky. Ryan finishes off on our final question, so I'll let Ryan ask.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Just everything that you talked about, from the importance of being like the good person and building a strong team and all that was incredible, and where you've come and all the difficulties you've faced along the line. You've went into, I think a lot of people who listened will get some good things from this. But what we finish off on is we ask all our guests what 3 pieces of advice, with the main 3 pieces that they would give to the younger generation and people coming up that maybe don't know their purpose and are looking to try and find, or like life advice growing up. Those 3 pieces of advice that you would give.
Well, I mean, as I said earlier on at the start, that you know, I left school and it wasn't difficult to get a job, right? Everybody got a job, and I believe up to a third is Scottish youngsters under 24 are unemployed. Do you know what I mean? And 19% of the population's in poverty. So you know that kind of annoys me. But what I would say to younger people is, life's not a rehearsal. Like, it's real. Do you know what I mean? And I touched on it earlier on, you can't change yesterday, but you can change today. And yesterday might have been a shit day. Do you know what I mean? but you can change today, you can change tomorrow. On the business side, I tell everybody, if you're a joiner, let's presume you're a joiner. If you're a telecom guy, let's presume that's right. Get other advice, particularly financial advice, right? Particularly on cash flows. So to me, proper financial controls are the most important thing. Although you have to sell, right? As an entrepreneur, you have to sell. But so your product has to be something that people want to buy. Because I've met lots of startups, and they're all making things. But what they do is their target is to get the next round of funding. And I'm saying, no, your customers should fund you. Not that, or you end up with nothing. So it's, don't be frightened to have a go, right? Because if you don't have a go, you won't know. It's no rehearsal, right? It's real. And get proper advice. Get good people advising you, because you're probably a specialist in what you do. It's a wider world, you know.
So
Amazing.
Give it a go. It's not a rehearsal, and get good advice. Which is obviously one of the key reasons, you know, when you're kind of backing that up with that advice, you know, that the last point there, get advice, is, like you say, the reason that Commsworld has gone from literally £0 turnover to 25 million in the space of 27 years. You know, and that's, you know, people think that's a long time, but that's a career, you know, and obviously there's been stuff along the way as well, you know.
Right, Chris, people talk about overnight successes. I'll guarantee you the majority of overnight successes you see are not overnight successes.
Yeah.
Guarantee you. They might be 27 years, right?
No, that was brilliant, Ricky. I just actually do have one final question, and it was, what is next for you? You know, what are you planning on doing?
Well, I mean, I'm a non-exec. Believe it or not, I'm heading up our acquisition side, so I'm still involved. But I'm not clocking in. I'm not doing any lifting. To be blunt, I've built a team that are better than me. I'm better out the way of that. Honestly, I've got a team that is phenomenal. On the personal front, you know, obviously we're in lockdown, so my plan was to spend more time travelling. Me and my wife, we're all in lockdown. I mean, what I've done for 27 years is I had the same holidays as everybody else. If me and my wife go to go somewhere, and she's like, we're away for 4 days, and I go, we've only got 3 days holiday, we can only go away for 3 days. I've always done that, so always done the same. So, I mean, me and my wife love travelling, but as you know, as an entrepreneur, you kind of work 12 hours a day, even in your mind. Do you know what I mean? You ultimately do. You just do, you know. But I feel that my mind doesn't need to be like that, because Commsworld's phenomenal. I've still got major investments, Commsworld, going forward. I'm genuinely as excited about the future of the company as I'm proud of the past. You know, so I'm still involved, but I'm not doing any lifting. I can take time out, I can advise. I've got a number of people that have asked for advice or help or whatever, which I'd love to do, you know. So that's kind of what I'm doing, Chris.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. You must be really proud of yourself, you know, and reflecting on it all and thinking about all the stuff you've been through, and to be able to say, I've done it, you know, I've done all this.
It is strange, because believe me, when me and Dave were standing scratching our heads, the women saying, no, we need 27 quid, or you can't. That seems like yesterday. I know my dad used to say, I know it's boring when you're young, but seriously, that seems like yesterday. Me and Dave walked out going, what we do? It's like...
Yeah, it's weird, because me and Ryan are always talking about how, you know, and obviously we're still young. We're like saying, oh, time goes really quick. You know, we're already saying that. We're talking about things that were happening 5 years ago when we first met. Like, that felt like yesterday. And it does scare me a little bit to think that if, you know, 40, 50, thinking it goes like that. Boom. That's why I'm saying all the time to people, if you want to do something, and I'm not saying that I'm some special advisor or somebody that knows stuff, because, you know, I'm still learning from everyone, but I'm trying to say, if you want to do something, you might as well start today on it, rather than waiting, you know.
If I'll leave you with this, right? I read this a number of years ago now. When people are being interviewed, for what a better term, when people are dying, literally, right? They're dying in the hospitals, and they're asked questions, and they're asked what they regret. Very few, if anyone, like nobody regrets the things they did. They regret the things they didn't do, you know, unless they're a mass murderer or something ridiculous, right? 99 people, 100 say, I wish I had. They didn't go, oh, I shouldn't have done that when they're on deathbed. They go, they regret no doing things. So don't regret not doing things. Have a go.
Yeah. No, it was really, really good. We'll wrap up on that, but I really appreciate your time.
No,
Ricky.
Thanks, Ryan. Nice to meet
you. Nice to meet you too. Right, well, thanks for joining. This was the Chris and Ryan Show with Ricky Nicol, and we will see you guys on the next episode.
Yes.
Thank you.